What's up, guys? It's LEGO Hobo 910 here with another LEGO video, and in this video I'm doing the showcase for my elemental castles here, a original concept I came up with like 6 months ago, pretty long time ago, and ever since then I've been doing updates on it every so often where I would show you build progress, kind of take you along for the journey of the building of this MOC. That's the second MOC that I've done that for on this channel, though I have done many others. So I decided to go with the 4 main elements for castles: earth, fire, water, and air. So we're going to start off the video here by doing kind of a basic run-through of all of them together and the whole kind of idea of them, and then we're going to go through and talk about each of them individually. So like I said, I was making a video series where I would just update you every so often on the MOCs and on what I was doing to build. That playlist now has over 20 videos in it, over a span of like 6 months. I was working on these for a fairly long time. And it actually started out as I wasn't going to build elemental castles, I was just going to build one kind of desert-themed castle. So that's why the Earth Castle doesn't seem too themed until, you look at some of their kind of monsters and their titans and everything. It was originally just going to be a single desert castle, but then I just got the idea to build 3 more to accompany it, to have 4 elemental castles. And then for each castle, I decided I would have a few things, to kind of keep them separate. I would first of all give them each different colored base plates, and then build barriers between. And then each element would have a titan. There are 4 around the map. And then they would each have their own kind of soldiers, where they would each have kind of their own uniforms to once again help separate the different factions. And so then I ended up with this in the end. It definitely grew a lot larger than I originally thought it was going to be from just the singular desert castle. So now let's go look at what the Earth Castle is, which was originally going to be the desert castle, the one that started it all. Here's the Earth Castle, which is the most traditional of all of them, because once again, it wasn't originally going to be elementally themed. We have this huge gray tower on this large earthy mound where I tried some new terrain techniques, where, you fade colors and also just all sorts of different little greebling type things. So that was definitely a fun experience, trying new techniques like that. And then also, building this long drawbridge was pretty fun. I originally didn't realize how long it was going to have a reasonable slant when I built the door up that high, but it was a fun challenge and ended up pretty cool in my opinion anyway. So then, since they have the most traditional tower, I also gave them the most traditional looking army, just using some pretty generic looking castle soldier type things here, with the like 2008 castle crown knights. And then also spaced throughout the MOC, there are 3 kind of commanders who have these white feathers on their helmets. We have one there, and then one way at the top of the tower there, who is commanding their titan, who is built with a mix of Bionicle and regular LEGO system. So let's go take a closer look at him. And he is the only of the ranged titans. As you can see, I have him holding one of those old Bionicle spike balls. And up here we also have a bunch of other rocks and one more spike ball for him to throw onto the battlefield. And in fact, I even have one down here at the center, which has clearly hit its target. He uses some fairly traditional Bionicle builds. He is actually one of the most integrated, though. It's hard to see from the front. If we move around to the back, you can see this pretty epic build I put on the back here, which I think definitely helps him look a lot cooler. Then he's just kind of hanging off the side of the tower with that big claw, as well as having his feet hooked on the side. One improvement I would make for something like this in the future is I would have definitely made a place for him to connect, because I've knocked this guy down so many times because he's basically just kind of balanced in there and held on by friction. So in the future, I would have, actually attached him better. Here is that one commander that I was talking about. Then moving down, here is the second layer where we have a little door build, which I'm pretty proud of. It's not actually openable, it's built in the same way that this is here, where there are just flat. They're basically plates with detailing flipped up like this. And then up here we have our warriors, a couple archers, and then 2 guards to the door. And then also sprinkled around this castle, I thought it'd be pretty cool to like have arrows sticking in, so there's those all around the castle. And then down at the very base here we have that door that I mentioned. And then this cool kind of chain border going around it, as well as a little flag there. Which then leads down to the drawbridge, down to kind of the war area for this castle. So let's go look at that now. So here is the battlefield, which is kind of just a desolate desert area with some fairly rugged but dying trees around, as well as plenty of little rocky terrains and little kind of scrubby bushes around. And then this leads into kind of the center battle there, where you can see one of the commanders and the second commander going down the drawbridge. I also really like the way that the angles there turned out, where it kind of actually looks like it's resting on the column, even though, as you can see, it's just barely touching it. And then we just have some battles going on down here. And then, once again, for each castle, a thing that I decided is they would each have 2 kind of animals or creatures. This one definitely has the most complex of them. We have these 2 stone giants here. Here's number 1. And here's number 2. They're brick built with kind of mixel ball joint style pieces. And then this one just has a ski pole attached to a spear for his weapon. And then he has this giant brick built club, kind of inspired by the Cave Trolls club from Lord of the Rings. I think these guys turned out pretty cool. I have favorites for each part. For example, I really like the way that I did the ropes here, and I think his clothing looks the best. Also, he is slightly bigger, but I kind of prefer this one's face, and also the body shaping there. So there's little things that I prefer about each of them, and also I really like that foot. You know, there's just little bits that I like about each of them. I can't pick a favorite, but they're definitely some of the coolest things I've built, and I'm very proud of both of them and think they look pretty sick. So this is the first castle that I built, and I'm very proud of it. And even though it's not as unique as the other ones, it really helps kind of set the medieval castle tone. And I really like it, and has a lot of things that I feel have improved me in a builder. First of all, building things like this, which I don't do much organic type building. Second of all this terraining. And also I experimented with a few tree techniques there, which was fairly simple, but still helped me grow as a builder. So now let's move on to the fire castle, the second castle I started building. So here is the fire castle, like I said, the second one I started work on. We're actually going to move this guy out of the way here so you can see it a bit better. They once again have a few commanders running around. They're the people with the flaming swords, one down there, kind of a wizard up there, and then one actually over there assaulting the air castle. So these I tried to make feel the most evil and devious of the 4 elements, as that's kind of what's associated with fire being the evil destructive element. So I definitely made them, I chose, darker colors for them, and also gave them the kind of more angry, evil-looking facial expressions, as well as, dark magic there, and all sorts of things like that. Then they have their Fire Titan here, who's definitely my favorite of the Titans. Once again, I have Bionicle and regular LEGO system mix. I just really like the way he turned out, especially with the chest area there, where he kind of has his flaming core with the kind of semi-metallic ribs. I just think he has a very cool, unique look, with them fighting the Air Titan, which we'll look at closer in a second. The castle here also has a little kind of causeway coming off it with a gate, and then there's a volcano growing out the side, which feeds the lava river at the bottom. And this is another thing that, once again, has really helped me grow as a builder. Experimenting with things like this, with fire there, I've never built anything like that. And also, doing some of the terrain here was definitely interesting and challenging. So then for the two animals or creatures for this one. I have these kind of ash horses. We have two there. As you can see, I took some kind of ripped-looking cloth pieces. That one, I believe, is from Dementor from the early years of Harry Potter, and that one is from a CMF that I had an extra of. And I attached those on using holes and then sticking spikes in there to secure them and then putting flames in the eyes. I definitely think those look pretty cool to assault the other elements. So now let's go in closer to get a better look at the castle. So here is the fire castle. We're going to go through kind of a tour of it, starting at the front gate here, which is covered in bones. And that's just an archway which leads up the drawbridge over to another door there, which once again doesn't open. I really like the way that turned out, though, using the crate pieces to kind of get texture. And then here's the volcano, which definitely was a challenge to build. And I used many new techniques and built in many ways that I have never built before, which then leads to the river of lava there, which I think looks pretty cool. And then up here we have our kind of walkways and areas for the minifigs to stand. This one uses chains as a railing, as well as a couple bones where I didn't have any chains to fit. And then there's the bridge there, where there's another person standing. And under the bridge, if we go around this way past the Earth Castle, it's easier to see from this side. There are plenty of bones and chains and all sorts of tubes hanging from it, which I think is definitely a cool look. Then here we have our evil sorcerer with the kind of shrine behind him, as well as a little kind of torch design, which I really like the way that turned out on. Also for this, I ended up experimenting around with lots of different rock work here, as you can see all around it, which was definitely pretty fun and has helped me, so that way in the future when I need to do rock work like this, I know more of how it works, what to do and what not to do. So for the two animals for this one, I made these kind of flaming horses there, where I took these kind of tattered looking cloth pieces and secured them in for, you know, the holes where the minifig neck would normally be. And it looks like kind of ash running off the horse. And then I put flames in the eyes. I definitely think those turned out pretty cool. So now I'm going to pull out the Flame Titan so we can look at him a bit closer. Here is the Fire Titan, who is definitely my favorite of all four. He has this really cool area here where it's kind of like the flaming core with metallic rib cages over it, which is definitely my favorite part of this, and I spent so long kind of sitting there experimenting with pieces, trying to get that to look just right. I think he just turned out very bestial and cool looking. I also really like the spiked tail on the end here, which used some pretty interesting Technic shenanigans to get it right. And I just think he looks really cool overall. I especially love this headpiece, which is from a Hero Factory set. And then the long posable neck, he just looks very animal and kind of real as, you know, a fantasy fire demon can get. He feels the most alive, and it just looks pretty awesome. I really like him, so now let's go put him back in the MOC and finish our look at the Fire Castle. So here's the Fire Castle, which is kind of starting to stray into fantasy. I feel like the farther I went with these castles, the more they strayed into fantasy, you know, the Earth one being the most kind of down-to-earth, and this still being fairly castle-like, but having a lot more fantasy characteristics to it, such as, you know, a volcano growing out of the middle of your castle, and fire magic, and just bones everywhere, and then slowly they just become more and more fantasy-like. I definitely really like this one. One thing that I would do to improve it in the future, if I were to do something like this again, is I wouldn't have this in the back behind the taller Earth Castle, because it does make it a bit harder to see. I would have definitely put that in the front. It's still a great castle nonetheless, so now let's move on to the Water Castle. So here's the Water Castle, which isn't very medieval castle-like. It is more so a Greek temple-inspired thing with some of the architecture with, you know, the columns and the going for something a bit more Greek than medieval. and then I put it on a little island here in the center of the ocean here, which uses some water techniques, which is a fairly common one that I haven't used before and want to try out. Basically, you take a bunch of, transparent blue and clear pieces. I even mixed in a couple trans green ones to give it kind of more of a sea green feel, and then you just dump it out. Also, a lot of the time you use transparent pieces for the foam, but I had a lot of these ice cream pieces laying around, and I thought, that would make great foam. So I tried it, and it turned out pretty great. I had to order a lot more. This castle definitely took the most part orders, with the air one I didn't need any, and then these two was just like one order for a couple bricks. This required a lot of part orders for all, the water pieces and the ice cream stuff, so it was definitely the most costly castle to get the pieces for, but I think it really, completes the look and makes it really interesting looking. With all the water here. It's a water technique that I'm probably going to use more in the future. I want to try varying it up, though, and trying new things, though, so it's not going to be my go-to. I'm going to try other things. I really like the height of this castle as well. It's not the highest, but it definitely tapers up into a cool column at the top there. It's kind of a blue gem here. And then also, various little nooks and crannies with artifacts throughout. So now let's go in and take a closer look at it. Now we have a much lower, close-up, detailed look at the water castle. We'll start at kind of the beachfront where it connects to the Earth Castle, which is definitely a really good transition to kind of create this beach. We have a few kind of ruined monuments here, one being smashed by a boulder from the Earth Titan here, and then this little tiny kind of sloped ramp which leads up to the drawbridge, which can open. This is actually as far as it can go, but it's meant to look like it could go all the way down. And then here we have the Water Titan, who is currently slicing this man in half. And this is the only Titan that is actually built in and really can't be removed. As you can see, he's connected way down there. And I kind of made him have a bit of a pirate vibe, which is weird as this is a medieval M.O.C. and this is kind of a Greek-inspired thing. But I think it still works. I also tried to make it look kind of, like he was just sitting at the bottom of the ocean and various things have just fallen on him over the centuries and collected and become part of him. So he has all sorts of, like swords and gems and a little bandolier with various... And then even, like using some handcuffs on his faceplate there, just kind of weird chains and such. And I think that's a pretty cool look. This is also the only one that doesn't actually have two animals. It just has this one octopus here, because I really couldn't think of any other animals to use. I had, like, crocodiles and sharks laying around, but none of them just really fit and felt right and had a good place in the M.O.C. So this one only has one animal, which is that squid. There's a bit of a kind of phalanx here on the bridge. It's not quite wide enough to actually set up a phalanx, so I just did that. And that leads to the entrance, which has this really cool sloped roof with lots of gold detailing on this. This took so many gold pieces, basically all of my gold pieces, and I still wish I had a little bit more gold on it. This whole castle took the gold ones, not just the roof here, because that'd be pretty nuts. I used some of these cool tridents from the Atlantis sets, and then I even used some airplane fins to create that kind of cool sloped look in there. But then we have a little bit of a battle going on in the entranceway. Then around the side here, you can see a bit more into the castle, where you have those kind of spears standing up, which is a pretty cool look. And then there's these little towers on either side, where we have a person on either one, an archer here. Then we can go in and take a look at the inside. Here's the inside, which has a couple walkways going across, with then a few little arches in them, as you can see. And then on the center there, we have a little spiral column, which is just built out of 2x2 jumpers, with a shark statue on top of it. I used the gargoyle torso from the CMF, because I had an extra one, and then an Atlantis shark head, as well as I gave him a Lord of the Rings sword, and then kind of that silver thing, which is used in the Black Panther sets for Nakia. And then there's a little crate of fish, and in there isn't that much detail. There's just kind of like a little pond there with some fish swimming around and a crab. Sadly, I couldn't, do the same water texture in there, mostly because I ran out of pieces to do it, and second of all, it'd just be really hard to build in there correctly. So, I'm just saying it's because the water is more purified in there, that's what we're going with. Then there's a little gateway to a ladder in there, which in reality leads to nothing, but is supposed to, simulate leading to rooms in this tower here, which has some interesting sloping and various things there. Then all throughout we have little kind of nooks there where artifacts are there, and then there's the same nook on the other side, which has a goblet with a blue stud in it, which I kind of imagine as a, magical water lamp type thing. And up here we have some more crannies, where we have this golden armor and then this weird spike thing. There's another one on the other side, and then also on the back here we have just another little golden spike build, because I thought it looked kind of cool. Then, moving even farther up in the center, we have kind of another water lamp through that archway. And then all the way at the top, we have that telescope with the blue gem, which looks pretty cool. It's kind of like the crown jewel of the kingdom, which gives them their water abilities. There's another tower over here, which has the central arch with then this kind of column of white cones and gold studs alternating there, which I think looks pretty cool. And then up here, we have some more intricate detailing, even using some upside-down building and telescopes attaching weirdly to create all sorts of weird, intricate looks, which eventually all leads up to a golden trident, kind of in between two spikes at the top, which definitely has a pretty... So, that's it for the water castle here, which is definitely one of the ones that has helped me grow the most as a builder, building in this kind of different style, as well as, using weird different techniques here. And it's just a very weird, intricate build that has really helped me grow as a builder. So now that we've looked at the water castle, let's move on to the air castle. Here is the air castle, the fourth castle I started working on, and it was also definitely one of the hardest to build, for many reasons. First of all, getting these floating islands to float using the Technic structures, and then doing the weird sideways building and making sure all that got lined up for kind of the dirt underneath the flat grass on top, as well as, getting the top built, making sure, going from side building to the top properly. It was definitely weird and challenging, and it's still not very stable, so in the future, doing things like this, I would work on the stability, because it's still very wobbly and not very secure, but it's good enough for now. So we have 3 islands leading up to the main castle there, which actually went through many changes when I was coming up with the concept. Originally I was going to have a cloud with the castle on top, and then 4 trees kind of branching up, and holding the castle to earth, and then, going and building the castle on the cloud. So, it's definitely very different than what it was originally going to be, but then I decided to change with this idea where it's kind of just like a floating island with a main tree as the structure, and then a windmill to kind of get that whole air idea across. So now let's go in a bit closer and look at everything. So actually starting on the ground level here, I have a lot of kind of plant life and forest on the bottom that is rising above, as I've always kind of associated air with nature as well, and that might be partly because of Bionicle. When I was little, their air titans were always kind of green and lived in jungle forest type areas, so I've always kind of associated, forests and nature with the air element. So there's a lot of that going on. And then connecting the islands here, I have a few little sand green ladders, except I didn't quite have enough pieces to build them all correctly. So as you can see, this one I have it broken a bit, and then I have some rubble laying on the ground. And then the bottom one, I didn't even build a ladder, I just kind of have a smashed ladder and pieces laying around and then up there as well to make it look broken and destroyed, as if, like they destroyed it to block the enemies from coming up, or the enemies may have destroyed it. And then there's a little brown path down there. These guys are, once again, kind of like going with the nature theme of their army. Tried to make sure that they kind of connected with nature, made them kind of ranger-like, giving them, hoods and cloaks and capes and very not armored armor. They are more cloth and leather and vest type things. And then we have the Air Titan up here, who's leaping off from that platform to fight the Fire Titan. He's the most bionicle out of anyone. He does not use any system pieces, which really helps him contrast and makes him definitely look pretty cool. He just uses that pretty cool scythe piece as his weapon there, and I built a giant clear brick pillar to hold him up in the air. So then for the two animals as well, I just took some great eagles from Lord of the Rings. We have one there, and then one attacking the water castle here. And so now let's move up to the actual, top air castle and look at that. So here's the air castle on the floating island. This is the only castle that actually has fully functioning doors there, although I didn't give them much space to move, and they're kind of hard to make work, so I just have them permanently propped open a bit. And there actually isn't much interior for this castle here. There's a slight little courtyard there, and also a little arch leading back into the tree, where there's just a little room, which you can imagine going up much higher and having, all sorts of things throughout the tree. I also did lots of... I learned a lot about, doing foliage in this build here, where I have this tree here, which required a lot of part orders because I didn't have many of these main tree pieces. And then I even experimented, like taking some of these stalks here and these little bits and even the Harry Potter wand pieces to create sticks and vines and various other sort things. And then I tried to make it look kind of like it was all growing out from the tree, as if the tree built the castle and they didn't build the castle out of the tree built the castle itself. And we just have a little windmill up here which can spin, and then has a yellow roof just for a bit of color contrast. And also up here you kind of get that good idea of what I'm talking about with the rangers, where they have the hoods and the bows and are just very kind of forest people. And so overall I think that turned out pretty good. And the air castle was definitely one of the most challenging, but it's also one of the ones that I'm most proud of. So those are my elemental castles, which was definitely a fun build experience and also helped me grow a lot as a builder, and I learned a lot of new techniques. And also this is my biggest MOC in base area, and also I'm not 100% sure, but I'd be willing to bet that it's also the highest MOC I've ever built, and is definitely a really complex one, and I had a lot of fun building it. I hope you like it as much as I do, but that's all from me for now, and bye.